What you are about to hear is a special release of our members-only episode, Freaky Bigfoot, Hairy High Strangeness. Filled with Sasquatch speculation and mind-bending accounts, it's one of our favorites all the way back from Season 3, and we hope you guys dig it. And to you amazing members, things are shifting in the hole, and because we're currently moving cross-country, there's sadly no new members expansion episode this week.
What?
But we hope you understand and will stick with us till our next release. It's going to be great.
Yes!
If you're not a member yet, you can sign up at beliefhole.com to get access to over 100 members-only episodes just like this.
Amazing.
So sit back and enjoy this classic and terrifying Belief Hole members-only episode.
Oh yeah. Freaky Bigfoot. Hairy High Strangeness.
Hairy Guy Strangeness?
High Strangeness.
Hairy Guy Strangeness.
That sounds like a strange Saturday night to me.
Hairy Guy Strangeness.
Sounds like a let's not meet story of a date that went wrong.
Let's meet at the park with Bigfoot in the dark.
In the dark.
Hairy Guy Strangeness. Hairy Guy Strangeness.
It's Hairy High Strangeness.
Oh, yeah.
But I like that though.
New podcast name, Hairy Guy Strangeness. It's all about Bigfoot.
Or just a hairy man, a hairy Italian man who...
Come on down to the park in the dark with Hairy Guy Strangeness.
Hairy Guy Strangeness. All right.
Okay. Isn't that odd?
Yeah. Well, let's get into it, guys. I'm excited to finally do some Bigfoot stuff. After 3 years of talking about him in the peripheral.
He's come up. He's perked his head up above the tree
I'm
line.
really excited about it.
John is super excited.
I was surprised we sent John a list of like 5 possible topics and we broke them down. He get a clear picture of where we're thinking of taking the episode. And he picked.
I didn't pick
No, he didn't pick
Bigfoot.
Bigfoot. He said they all sound good.
Yeah.
Which to us
I
was like...
said I didn't mind which one you did.
But you specifically said...
Well, the way you described it sounded like it could be interesting. I mean, your average Bigfoot story, it's like... Wah, wah.
Well, it's usually you see something
Maybe
that's
there
hairy.
needs to be a new name for him.
I think that's what buttons your top, is the name.
Buttons your top.
Yeah.
That's what bums you out about it.
It just sounds so boring in my mind.
Well, because Bigfoot's everywhere. Bigfoot's been everywhere for the last 50 years.
Yes, it's very prevalent. Saturated the scene for a long time.
Yeah, especially in our generation, you know, or the generation after us at least. Bigfoot hunters and it's everywhere all day.
Yeah.
It's really taken the fun out of the mystery.
And no offense to those that are into the Bigfoot,
No, not at all.
for sure.
And for all the talk, there's still very little evidence.
Well, it depends on how you define evidence. There's
There's
definitely...
no body.
The body's the issue. There have been bodies that have popped up from time to time. Mostly hoaxes. I think there was an airline pilot, that would be weird, an Air Force guy.
That's what they call him.
An airman?
Air Force officer who shot a Bigfoot supposedly. And he was kept in ice.
You talking about the Iceman?
Bob Gymlan covered
Yeah,
that.
it's pretty controversial.
You know, we should do a watch along of Harry and the Hendersons.
That'd be great.
Such a good movie.
It's classic.
The story I'm actually going to talk about today has aspects of Harry and the Hendersons if it was like a horror movie. Because there's an attraction to the children. So what we're doing today, essentially, if we want to just kind of break it down for people, I want to talk about some of the freakier attacks, the scarier stories. And I came across this one. It's one I've actually wanted to do for a long time, but it's a long story, so I edited it down. But we didn't want to take up the whole episode with it, but it's pretty much a horror story, if you can imagine yourself in this scenario. So that's going to be really interesting to get into.
Yeah, I don't think about Bigfoot being horror, so that'll be interesting.
Well, usually, I mean, and a lot of people in the cryptid community, the Bigfoot community, probably wouldn't like that depiction of Bigfoot because, you know, like any group, people tend to have their beliefs.
Yeah.
It becomes kind of a religion to some people, and they're like, well, he's really like an angel brought here to make us stop, you know, producing nuclear weapons. And like, whether it's UFOs or Bigfoot or Dogman even, people are like, these are just beautiful creatures, which, you know, I'm sure that's
a big fat lie.
It's a big fat lie.
Dangerous.
They're here to eat you.
Demons of the woods.
But there are some people that would really upset if you said that. So,
Yeah.
But obviously in the whole, we're open to all
Sent
possibilities.
straight from hell.
Exactly.
If you do not take the sacrament, he'll be consuming
Do
you.
not take the Bigfoot sacrament, you will be dragged into the ground.
Peanut butter wafer.
Pancakes.
If we get to some of my stuff, which we'll get to some of it for sure, but I wanted to focus in on some of the really weird stuff, the high strangeness stuff, some of the UFO relationship with Bigfoot portal stuff. Because like you said, people have their beliefs about Bigfoot and what it is. And you get a lot of
Blood and bone only.
controversy. Yeah, the blood and bone researchers, like it's a physical thing. And it makes sense if you think about for 40, 50 years, you have people trying to get Bigfoot accepted in the biological realm. So there are these cryptozoologists who've been trying to push for that for a long time. So you can see why they'd be frustrated and they don't want to look at the possibility of an interdimensional or supernatural aspects to Bigfoot because they're just trying to get the physical thing.
Or they're working with
Accepted.
the aliens.
But we'll get to some fun stuff later.
Well, it's all going to be fun.
That's true. It's all going to be fun.
Way to sell it.
First, we got Jeremy's boring
I didn't
story.
mean that. I meant like weird stuff. We're going to get to some, the Hairy High Strangeness aspect of the title.
Hairy Guy Strangeness.
We'll get to later in the episode. We're going to be talking about a couple of books I've been wanting to do for a while, where the footprints end by...
Oh, Timothy Renner, right?
Yes, Timothy Renner and Joshua Cutchin. Awesome books, dude. These are...
Where the sidewalk ends?
That's what I think of too when I hear it.
No, it's Where the Footprints End. And the title, I believe, comes from the idea of there's a lot of accounts of following the tracks of Bigfoot and then the tracks just ending. All the stuff they get into about the bizarre nature of
Invisibility cloaks?
Bigfoot. Visibility cloaks. You've got mind speak, telepathy, Bigfoot stories.
Fanny packs? Bigfoot tech?
That's a thing. So we'll get into some of their work. Definitely some interesting stuff in
That
there.
does remind me of a quick anecdote about how they'll follow the footsteps and they'll just suddenly disappear.
Yeah.
You hear that a lot in a lot of different types of cryptids and entities, but it reminded me of a story I just heard that I almost brought to the table. But essentially it was this guy driving his car. He ends up hitting, and this was like in a hot spot. Remember that experience where there were a bunch of things happening? Like in the 60s, a UFO had crashed, and then these weird men in black had been hanging around for a while, and then there were all these Bigfoot reports. And one of those cases was a man who hit this large, hairy man, this Bigfoot, and he disappeared. Not like he ran away, but he literally, after he hit him, he looked at him and then just faded out.
That's one of the issues with the researchers. When it comes to those sorts of stories, you have a lot of examples of disappearances. And this is interesting. You know, the BFRO, the Bigfoot Research Organization or whatever. But what's interesting is there's a lot of reports, and they discuss this a lot in the book, where if you look at the supernatural stuff that get reported to the BFRO, they get kind of shoved off into a dustbin of reports that flesh and bone researchers don't want to look at because they have all these supernatural aspects to these stories. But there's so many commonalities that if you start to take them out of the dustbin and look at them, you see these patterns, and that's what they bring in these books. There's so many supernatural examples of Bigfoot encounters, but you don't hear about them.
So are you saying that they purposely hide them, or they're just not focused on?
They're kind of like just not looked at.
They're not really talked about.
It's not super aligned with the narrative of the material-only, physical, missing link Bigfoot type concept. So everybody has their own feelings about Bigfoot. You know, in the whole, we're definitely a little more open-minded. At least I am, John. I don't know where you lie on the Bigfoot. Well, maybe you'll have an idea at the end of this episode.
Oh, if I think it's real or not?
From what I understand from previous episodes is John's baseline, and I'm going to speak for you, is that,
Go for it.
Yeah, it's probably real. I don't care.
Yeah, it's pretty good at something. I mean, I think it's definitely possibly real, but yeah, if they found it tomorrow, I don't know if I would even care.
Yeah.
I'd read it on the show and be like, oh, they found him.
But you might care if the high strangeness aspects are connected. Like,
Like, what if a group of them entered your room at night, right? And they were there to tell you that they were about to guide you to enlightenment.
and they spoke to you
I wouldn't
telepathically.
care.
now you're just riding that all the way home.
Yeah, I believe you. You care a whole
No,
lot.
I think I mean, I do like the stories that have more to them, you know, like the high strangeness.
If there's a
ones.
cross-dimensional aspect or a even like an emotional, spiritual aspect to these creatures, it might matter more.
Yeah.
And that's the argument. Actually, at the end, this is how I'm going to wrap the episode. It's going to be a lot of fun. This was actually on Coast to Coast. I just randomly heard, and this guy had recorded, supposedly had been given permission by the Bigfoot to record. Is it Bigfoot?
Oh, no, you're right. I've been looking into Bigfoot for decades, of course, but I never really looked up
the plural?
if there's an official plural. But according to Merriam-Webster Dictionary, Big Feet is the plural.
Okay, good to
Bigfoot.
know.
Yeah. I don't know if I agree with that, but we'll use it.
Well, good to know.
Decepticon of Big Feet?
A Septicon? Is that a Transformer villain?
It's 6 of them.
Nice, John.
Anyways, this guy, his name is Mike Patterson in Canada, Ontario, but he was basically given permission by his Big Feet to
What is it with
record them.
Pattersons and Big Feet?
He was there for a long time. We'll get into that later, but we're going to play a clip of his. So you guys should check him out. Whether you believe him or not, it's pretty
The
incredible
Bigfoot
audio.
is speaking sort of broken English with him.
And it's
Pretty
very
cool.
loving.
Whoop, shit.
Similar. So we're going to get into that later. That'll be fun. Stay tuned for that clip, guys. But first, let's get into the potentially terrifying aspect.
Yeah, I'm excited. I've been wanting to do this story for a long time, so I'm glad you pulled it out of the dark recesses of the Bigfoot bin.
Thank you. And I'm going to open it up with an anecdote from from a Protestant missionary in the same area. This is actually in Spokane. So he was a missionary to the Spokane Indians, or the Spokane Indians, and it was the then territory of Oregon in the 1840s. His name was Elkanah Walker, and this was from his diary. And I just think it's really interesting because this is back in 1840, and it establishes some of the parallels we hear today with the Big Feet, being a race of giants. They called them men stealers and even cannibals.
Creepy name.
I happen to have a old journal entry, also from the 1800s, also in Washington. That's going to come up later.
What? Really?
With our weird UFO tie-ins.
Battle of the journal entries. Okay, so I'm going to read this real quick just to get this feeling out here.
Reel up.
So Walker wrote, "My health is very poor, and I fear I shall be unable to pursue my labors as a missionary. I should not be at all surprised if this mission prove a total failure. It has been very sickly in this region the last part of the winter. Many have died. I do not know what can be done to save them from utter extinction. They seem as fated to fade away before the whites as the game of their country. There seems but only one way that they can be saved, and that is by setting them and civilizing them, and this I fear they cannot bear. I sometimes think that it will be as injurious to them," and this part's interesting, "as their superstitions, which are carrying them off very fast. Whatever is done for them must be quickly done, for there will soon be nothing to labor for." Now that line, he fears that other than the sickness that's killing them, it's their superstitions which are carrying them off very fast. And now you could say, well, that's a medical thing. Maybe they're not taking medicine or
Metaphor?
Yeah, a metaphor. But this is where it gets interesting. "I suppose you will bear with me if I trouble you with a little of their superstitions. They believe in a race of giants, which inhabit a certain mountain off to the west of us. This mountain is covered with perpetual snow, and they inhabit the snow peaks. They hunt and do all their work at night. They are men stealers. They come to the people's lodges at night, when the people are asleep, and take them and put them under their skins and to their place of abode without even waking. When they wake in the morning, they are wholly lost, not knowing in what direction their home is. Their track is 1.5 feet long. They steal salmon from Indian nets and eat them raw as the bears do.
Salmon.
If the people are awake, they always know when they are coming very nearby, for," this will sound familiar, "for their strong smell that is most intolerable. It is not uncommon for them to come in the night and give 3 whistles.
That sounds about right.
And then the stones will begin to hit their houses. The people believe that they are still troubled with their nocturnal visits. We need the prayers of the church at home." So this guy, in his time of trouble, was so concerned not only with his mission failing, but with their superstitions, or with maybe this potentially actually happening, that he was calling for their prayers at home. I just thought that was really interesting.
Yeah.
This is, a guy who's obviously is not a part of their superstitions, doesn't follow them, but found it profound enough. But that's so common, like, yeah, the rocks being thrown, the nocturnal aspect.
Mm-hmm. It's funny because the journal entry I have later, salmon is definitely part of their diet, but there's tanning them.
Why wouldn't it be?
Yeah.
But that's a little more crazy diary entry because the relationship between these things, they're coming down from the sky, and these white birds that don't have wings that go vertically.
What?
So it's a lot more
yours?
UFO.
Okay, a little more high strangeness.
Yeah, but it's in the same area. It's in Washington. It's interesting.
We ended up getting a lot of stuff from Washington.
Well,
Like
it's the first or second highest rated place for Bigfoot encounters and UFOs. I'll get to that later, but there's an interesting crossover between sightings of Bigfoot and UFOs. Like the top 6 states are the same in both categories.
Well, immediately it made me think of that Mount St. Helens explosion.
Oh, yeah.
You heard those rumors, John, about the big feet that were discovered after the explosion?
No.
So you'd think that there'd be a lot of destruction, devastation. Animals found had to be cleared out, burned. They set up these temporary places to burn animals.
Allegedly.
Well, that was true.
What, just the ash that
Yeah, the ash explosion.
suffocated them probably?
Well, yeah, I think when the eruption occurred, you had the blast that eviscerates all the oxygen, so a lot of them suffocate. And then you have the pyroclastic flow. My 4th grade geology.
Well, I mean, so just recapping the blast that was there a lot of lava in that one too, or was it just more like
the blast itself is just a rush of like poisonous gases.
I remember that.
Yeah,
but like all the fires that happened around, was that lava or was that just the heat?
Yeah, there was lava too because you remember there was a lot of papyrus. Papyrus. There's a lot of paper hanging around.
But most of the deadly stuff does come from like the hot ash. And that starts fires, right? It's not like the lava goes out 50
the lava's
miles.
a slow drip. I'm not a volcanologist, but I think there's maybe some initial lava, but it is initially the explosion, the heat that kills a lot, and then there's a slow drip of
imagine seeing
magma.
that? Mom and Dad did, didn't they? They saw the eruption. They were out.
Yeah, they have pictures. We have pumice from it.
But like the whole side of the mountain blew off.
Yeah.
Can you imagine being close to that?
That would be terrifying.
I know on the mountain they have a video, really sad but fascinating. They have a little exhibit on the mountain you can go to.
Someone that was right there.
They knew they were going to die, so they just filmed it.
Yeah.
And were able to, I think they like landed on their camera. I got the story wrong before. I think we told on the show, and someone corrected me, so I don't remember. But I don't remember the correction. So
Probably a pretty quick way to go.
yeah,
And if the NDEs are true, I'm sure they were just like, bloop, out of the body, fly away.
might be one of the better ways to leave.
Yeah. I mean, can you imagine? I mean, if you're going to, I sometimes watch those apocalyptic movies and I'm like, that would be kind of awesome to die that way. Terrifying, but also like, wow.
At least you're seeing something.
Just amazing. Yeah.
There's also a sad kind of truth, I think, to an apocalypse scenario. I used to feel like if a meteor's coming, at least I'm not dying alone. Everybody's going.
Yeah.
Like it makes death a little less scary. But now I think about that eventual, if there were an apocalypse, if it's a life-ending human extinction event, right? Then that's terribly sad. That's way worse than dying alone. Because then your whole species is gone.
Yeah, but think about how if you all died at once and all the souls that would come out of the body.
That's true. Then we just go to another.
Like, holy crap.
It's a party.
There's dad over there.
I take it back. You're right.
Anyway.
I know what you're saying though. Yeah, but I still think the human race would survive.
Yeah, there'd be some, just like the last time.
Yeah.
Probably happened.
You can't kill us. Can't kill us all.
I'm sure it's happened. I mean, if you listen to a lot of beliefs around the world from ancient
There'd
cultures.
be some survivors, probably like Bill Gates underground.
It'll be him and Elon will be hanging out there.
And they'll make babies in a tube together. I don't know why I said
Anyway.
Can you imagine it like a Bill Gates, Elon
and
Musk baby?
That'd be the strangest baby.
Please put a sound effect in for what it would sound like.
Anyway, big feet. They'll survive.
The whole reason I brought that up was just to say there was this rumor going around about essentially with the aftermath of the volcano, you had not only livestock and wildlife that were killed, but you had the big feet because they would be in the area. There's such a high number of sightings in this area. And like we said, historically, in 1800s, journal entries about these race of giants that lived in the area on the mountain.
Yeah, there was a book by someone named Suki or Sushi. It was a testimony given by a daughter of someone named Mr. Bradshaw, who allegedly was working with I don't remember, the Air Force or someone at the time, but there was allegedly one pile that was being guarded by National Guard or something.
Pile of what, big feet?
Well,
right?
that was the thing. They had a
pile of big feet.
Allegedly, a pile of deer, pile of elk, pile. I have the story, but I wasn't going to get into it because it's dubious.
Right. Well, it's a rumor. Track the source down to that one book, essentially. I don't think there's
multiple accounts of Mount St. Helens event.
Well, of course, that happened.
No, I mean of seeing big feet in the aftermath in this book. But I didn't have time to get the book because I didn't realize there wasn't. Usually I buy the physical copy if I have time, but it was like, I looked at this last night. It was like only paperback.
Well, from what I understand from reading different accounts, there were temporary areas set up around there, not crisis centers, maybe crisis centers, but basically part of it was to clear out the areas of like dead animals and stuff. And that's when you had reports of like a helicopter carrying a cargo net with hairy arms hanging down and, one in the back bed of a truck with a tarp over it, piled in with an elk or burned on pyres. But they were in different parts of around the volcano in reports of this. But who knows? I mean, that's an idea.
Why would they hide it though?
That is the question. Because, well, I don't know. There's multiple reasons. One, if they are this intelligent race of, say, beyond human or high human or parallel to human, they wouldn't want people to know about them potentially because this is a group of things that you can't control that are maybe beyond our communication. Even if they know about a potential interdimensional connection or UFO, whatever you want to get into.
Don't want mainstream science to start poking around in there.
Yeah, and will the government ever, and this goes back to the containment theory that we've talked about with the idea of national parks being set up around these areas with high strangeness, portals, like in Arizona, different things that can't be controlled. The best way to control that is to set up an area where, for instance, like a wilderness area, I didn't know this, but like in Arizona, the Superstition Mountains that we almost covered for this episode, it's designated a wilderness area from what I understand. And that means that you can only go in there on foot as a man or woman or on a horse.
Right, no motor vehicles.
Even government employees or parks people, they can't use powered saws. You have to use axes. And so
you don't want to disturb the interdimensional wildlife.
You can't fly in unless there's like a search and rescue. You can't fly over the area.
What? Even a search? No, I don't believe that.
They said only a search and rescue.
Oh, okay.
That's the only time. So the point is
kind of like Antarctica.
Yeah, similar, like that kind of restriction. So that's interesting in that if you did want to hide something, and there are crazy stories in that area because there's so many accounts of strange happenings and entities, it makes sense that if there was something there that you couldn't control or you just couldn't explain, you might not want people building homes there and then running into it. You know what I mean? Because if you want a kind of control,
right,
especially of information.
Well, let's get to your first story because I want to get to the high strangeness.
This is called the Cowman of Copalis Beach.
Cowman.
I'm excited for this.
Now, this is a fascinating story. This comes from, actually, this was written under a pen name. An author wrote this under a pen name by the name of S.D. Baker. This comes from Washington State in the 1960s is when this happened. What's interesting is this story was told to him by his father. His father owned a lumber mill in the mountains there, and he was a brilliant guy. He had a bunch of patents for machinery parts that he built for his business and for the logging industry. But the interesting thing about the story is the fact that he writes it under a pen name as an author. He's not getting credit as an author. He's not getting any money for this. It's submitted to, I think, like some kind of journal interested in Bigfoot or something at the time. But Bob Gymlan, who I initially found this from on YouTube, great YouTube Bigfoot researcher, puts great videos together.
No relation to Bob Gymlan.
No relation to Bob Gymlan of the Patterson film that I know of. And it could be a pen name, I don't know. But in the video, he mentions what he finds credible as a writer himself, the fact that he's not a person trying to write a Bigfoot story as an author. He happens to be an author who had a Bigfoot experience.
Right.
So that's what makes it kind of an interesting story the way it comes out. And very well written.
And an interesting story it is.
Is it horror?
Oh, it's horrifying, I would argue. You beat the judge.
Is there eating of people?
It doesn't get quite that far. Don't spoil everything.
Spoil it up.
So this story comes from the author's father. It was told to him, essentially happened to his foreman at the time, and a man that, for the sake of the story, we'll call John. John was described as a bright, down-to-earth hard worker. The author's dad trusted John with thousands of dollars of vehicles and equipment, as well as the safety of his crews. He was not the kind of man to make up stories.
Well, that's a key fact there.
Because John is just a trustworthy
Just a solid guy all around.
Salt of the earth, but also cool as it gets.
Yeah, and you'll hear that in the story. So this happens on a Monday morning sometime in July in the 1960s. John was several hours late for work, which is rare for John, as we've said, but he appeared visually shaken. When asked what it was that was bothering him, John simply said,
"Something destroyed our house this weekend. The family's going to stay with my brother in Elm for a while."
Okay, the story begins. My dad asked John to explain to him what happened. John said that when he got home from work Friday evening, his youngest son, Tim, who was around 4 at the time, told him he saw a big, quote, cowman walking at the edge of their field that afternoon. He thought the boy meant cowboy because some of their neighbors wore cowboy hats when they were out in the sun. He asked him if the man was wearing a cowboy hat, and the boy said,
"No, Daddy, he was a cowman. Furry and stinky like the cows."
According to his wife, Tim was playing on the porch that afternoon when he came running in and said the cowman was stuck on the fence.
"The cowman is stuck on the fence, Mama."
She went out to see what he was talking about. As she opened the door, she was hit by a horrible smell, like wet dogs and garbage. Tim was pointing across the field opposite their house and said,
"He got loose."
She looked up, but only saw the top strand of barbed wire bouncing up and down, as if somebody had just pulled on it really hard and let go. She told him to come inside to play for the rest of the day. She felt uneasy and a little scared. Later that evening, their older son, John Jr., who was 12 at the time, told his parents that while walking home, he was unsettled by someone large but unseen walking alongside him just beyond the tree line. He never saw him, but only heard heavy footsteps and the breaking of branches. Hearing this, John strapped on his .357 and took his older son out into the field to have a look. They first walked to the area where the cowman was supposedly stuck on the fence and discovered a bit of matted flesh embedded in a large, foot-long clump of coarse reddish-brown hair tangled in the top strand of barbed wire. They climbed through the fence and continued toward the woods to look for tracks. After walking a ways, they came upon the rotting smell of garbage and wet dog, the odor his wife had reported earlier. John became unsettled by the feeling they were being watched. John decided it was time to head home. But as they began walking back, they could hear heavy footsteps off to their left. They stopped, and the footsteps stopped. They walked on nearly to the clearing, and John whispered to his son to
"Run like hell on the count of 3.
John Jr. nodded,
"Okay, Dad."
and John whispered,
1, 2, 3.
He gave his son a push in the back to get him started, then spun around and raced off the trail in the opposite direction towards the footsteps with his gun drawn. He made his way closer, pushing through the thick vegetation. He could hear it moving away from him, deeper into the woods. Thinking it might be a vagrant or a criminal camping out in the woods, he leveled his gun and said,
"Come out nice and slow, or I swear to God I'll come out there and shoot you."
It was silent for a moment, and then he caught something huge out of the corner of his eye. At first he thought it was a bear, and then suddenly he saw a huge hairy arm with a human-like hand reach out of the brush and grab hold of a small alder tree about 5 feet up. The thing pulled itself upright out of the bush. It stood on 2 legs and turned its upper body to glare at Jon. It was enormous. He said it was well over 7 feet tall and at least half that big through the chest. It was too dark to make out many features, but its eyes seemed to glow a deep red. And he thought he could see teeth, like it was curling its lips back. Suddenly, it lunged ahead, pushing back on the tree with tremendous force. The tree snapped loudly and crashed into the trees around it. It then disappeared into the deep brush with frightening speed, sounding like a bulldozer with no engine sounds. Realizing this thing was heading toward the house after his son, Jon turned and ran to the trail, hoping to gain ground on it and cut it off before it reached the clearing. He burst into the clearing and looked frantically about for his son. Jon Jr. was standing just inside of the fenced field, waiting for his dad. Jon screamed at him to run to the house.
Johnny, get to the house, boy, run!
Then he saw the thing crash out of the woods about 50 feet to his left. It crossed the 10-foot clearing and stepped over the fence in 2 strides, and was running through the field parallel to his son in a matter of seconds. Jon took aim at the creature, but didn't fire because he was afraid he would hit his son, so he vaulted over the fence in pursuit of them. He could see it angling towards his son, and knew there was no way his boy would make it to the gate before it cut him off.
Johnny!
In desperation, he pointed the gun to the ground and fired as he ran, hoping to scare it. It veered more sharply towards his son and put on an enormous burst of speed. He heard his boy scream as they seemed to collide. He saw the creature dip its shoulder down a little bit, and suddenly Jon Jr. was airborne. He flew about 10 feet, then hit the ground rolling. Now at this point, the creature continues on at amazing speed, heading back towards the woods. Jon stops at that point and fires 5 remaining shots. Says they went wild. Creature doesn't make a sound, and was soon over the fence and back into the woods.
So this thing just came out of the woods and basically beelined it towards his son and then rushed him, rammed him, and launched him into the air?
Yeah, it seemed
That's
like
crazy.
It seemed like a warning, you know. Don't mess with me. I can do what I want to your family, essentially.
Crazy.
So he continues. He reached his son, who was shaken up but not physically hurt. He asked his dad if it was a bear. Apparently, little Jon was so busy running for the house that he didn't see the creature running after him. He said something big and black suddenly ran into him, and he felt a huge paw on his bottom. And he said he felt like he was falling. Jon pulled his son to his feet, and they ran on through the gate and into the house, locking the door behind him. So at this point, out of breath, he goes to call the sheriff, and his wife's like, Jon, what's going on? You got to tell me. And he realizes, I can't call the sheriff. What am I going to tell him? Bigfoot is attacking my family?
Right.
So he hangs up the phone, and not to scare his wife or his kids, he says basically it was a bear. So he told his wife it was a large animal, possibly a bear. He didn't know how to begin to tell her their 4-year-old was right. His Cowman was real, and it was more frightening than anything he could imagine. He told them all to keep the doors locked and stay away from the windows. Around 10 o'clock that night, both boys were in bed, and Jon and his wife sat down to watch the news. They soon heard a loud moaning cry, kind of like the siren of the volunteer fire department. It would stretch out for a long time, and then end with a... It was coming from the woods opposite the house. His wife asked,
What the hell is that?
Jon answered truthfully, this time.
That's Tim's Cowman.
He then described to her the full details of what happened. The howling went on until around midnight, when it got quiet again. They slept in that morning, and the boys were already up and watching cartoons when they got out of bed. The first thing little Jon said was that he heard the bear rubbing against the house last night. He said he was too scared to get up and tell his parents and fell back asleep. Then Tim said,
The Cowman talks funny.
This stopped Jon cold. He asked his son.
When did you talk to the Cowman?
Tim replied.
Last night in my room?
Jon asked,
The Cowman was in your room?
No, Daddy, he's too big for my room. He talked to my window.
Tim said, and turned back to the cartoons.
What did the Cowman say?
Jon asked.
He talks funny. I don't know what he said. He talks like this. ooh, ah, ooh, ah.
Tim said, and started making strange monkey-like noises.
The cowman tried to get in your window?
Jon asked, breaking out in a cold sweat.
He's too big for that. He made funny faces. He has Lincoln log teeth.
Tim said with a smile. So later, Jon learns that Tim meant he had square teeth that looked the same size as the small blocks of his Lincoln log set. So things continue, and I'll say I edited this story down a lot. If you want the whole story, I have in the show notes, but
It's a doozy.
It's a doozy. I'm bringing us to the terrifying conclusion. Fast forward to the final encounter some nights later. While Jon was out investigating a disturbance in the barn, his wife is awakened by Tim talking to someone, as well as a bizarre clicking, chirping sound. Tim wasn't in bed. He was standing in front of the windows. She told Timmy to get away from the window.
Mommy, listen. The cowman can sound like a bird.
Tim said, pointing excitedly at the dark figure in the window.
Timmy, get away from the window.
She said, trying to keep her voice quiet. Right after she spoke, the noises from outside changed. It went from a soft chirping to a strange gibbering, almost like human speech, with an occasional pig-like snort thrown in. At this time, Little Jon woke up and said,
What is that?
rather loudly. This seemed to incite the creature, and it hit the side of the house with its fists hard enough for the walls to tremble. At this, Little Jon screamed, and Tim yelled.
Quiet, you're gonna scare him away.
His mother again yelled at Tim to
Get away from the window.
and grabbed the shotgun from above the headboard. The creature leaned down and looked straight in the window at her. She screamed and raised the shotgun, afraid to shoot because her son was so close to it. She went to grab Tim, and there was an explosion of breaking glass. A gigantic hairy arm reached through the window toward her son. She screamed again and fired over Tim's head, blowing out the rest of the window and hitting the creature with a double-aught buckshot. It jerked backwards out of the window and disappeared into the dark. A few seconds later, she heard it screaming in the woods. After hearing the shotgun blast and finding his family sobbing in the bedroom, he piled his family in their pajamas into the car, and they headed to his brothers in Elma.
He was trying to get to Tim. He was trying to get my baby.
She kept crying, and he comforted her as best he could while driving. They stayed the rest of that night and the following night with his brother's family in Elma.
Scary.
So he ends up going back the next day. They left the door open. They're like, oh, vandals will come in or criminals steal stuff. They go back. The whole house is trashed. Furniture's flipped over. You know those old, huge, heavy TV sets from like the 60s, 70s? Thrown across the room. Everything's broken. Obviously terrified. They didn't want to go back to the place. They didn't want to deal with their stuff. They had to get a loan to like basically rebuy all their furniture and everything, and never went back.
Also, like, what'd they do with the house? They just left it there?
They sold it.
They sold it to just some
I had to edit it down, but
chaps.
well, actually, I think he mentioned in the story that there were no encounters after this on the property because whoever he sold it to, he had kept in touch with. So for whatever reason, they think that this thing was attracted to Timmy.
Yeah, I was going to say, what was the incident, or there was an incident that incited it? You don't really know.
It sounded like they formed a bond with Timmy playing outside in the field and this thing coming up to the...
You do hear that a lot.
Well, and the author had wondered, well, first he asked his dad, was this little Timmy, your employee's son, was he very hairy? Obviously jokingly. Why was this thing attracted to it? And they considered the idea maybe if this was like a large female Bigfoot or something that had lost
a baby
or something, that it was
baby crazy.
Just baby crazy. Who knows? But it's a very interesting story. So the author asks at the end of this, and we'll have the whole thing in the notes. The author asks, if this was just an elaborate story, what did he stand to gain? Meaning Jon telling his dad the story. To profit from a story in any way, you have to share it with people. And he just told his father, the man, Jon just told the author's dad, my dad and the other folks mentioned in the story are the only ones who ever heard it until now, of course. And then I'm asking, what does the author have to gain? Like I mentioned earlier, he's writing under a pen name, not paid for the submission, just for fun.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe, but definitely a fascinating story.
I mean, there's so many tie-ins to well-known experiences.
Right.
That's such a common thing with these bonds formed with children. There's some of the more out there stories, but that happens.
This is right at the beginning of the Bigfoot craze too, with all these parallels that still ring true today.
Mm-hmm.
So they thought that Tim was playing with it?
Yeah, because he was communicating with it in a friendly way through the window later in the story.
And
then
early on, I think
he was...
I don't remember the early on part.
I guess he kept calling it the Cowman, and the
That's
dad
right.
thought that he meant cowboy because there were some cowboys that worked on the ranch.
But he was calling it that apparently because it was this giant,
Big
smelly
stinky-
thing.
the size of a
they
cow.
would be afraid of something like that.
I think there is something with kids, especially if it's not putting off a scary presence. Just a big animal. Yeah.
Think of the children who slip into bear cages at the zoo because they think that they see cartoons of bears. Like,
Right.
It's a big furry cuddly thing. I have a teddy bear at home. This is a large teddy bear until it's not.
So Bigfoots can be violent. Definitely seemed
It was aggressive
wanted
with
to
a
take
purpose.
him because it was baby crazy.
Maybe.
It was the older son that had rammed in the field.
John
when he was
Jr.
running. Okay.
Yeah. Little Tim was the
Oh,
one that
okay,
he
right, yeah.
was talking to.
That makes sense. He wanted the little one.
And you hear the chirping, and he says he can make bird sounds.
That's such a common thing.
And you hear that now, like in the early 60s, and whenever this story came out, I'm not sure how much later, but it's definitely like a theme that's come through. And this area is packed with these stories. Like
Jam-packed.
It's Washington.
Yeah, it was a good story though.
Thank you. I'm glad you enjoyed it. I've wanted to share that one for a long time. It was so long. So like I said, the original's 14 pages long. We'll have it in the show notes. I edited it down to about 5 with bullet points.
Also a link to Bob Gimlin's video on it because he's got those really great illustrations.
Yeah, I
too.
recommend him. If anyone's interested in Bob Gimlin, the creator on YouTube, just puts out great videos. So we'll definitely link to his video in the show notes. And I think that's for my portion, Chris. I'm going to save that clip for later, for the end of the episode, wrap up. But I understand you have some high strangeness you'd like to get into.
Yes,
The
yes.
Bigfoot loves Mike one.
Yeah, that'll be at the end of the episode.
Can we take a quick break first?
Yeah, let's take a short break. You guys go take a
Hey, you
break
guys,
too.
yeah, go potty.
Go have fun. Go do
I'm so
something.
used to saying potty to Jake. I'm sorry. You're an adult. Go to the bathroom if you need to. We'll be back.
All right, guys, welcome back from the break.
Welcome back.
Now, if you need some energy after all the Bigfooting around we've been doing, we've got just the ticket.
Oh, yes, we do.
We'd like to introduce you to our new sponsor, Criminal Coffee.
Criminal coffee.
They're pretty cool.
Yeah, guys, I just got this coffee in the mail the other day before I moved down to Texas, and it is absolutely delicious. Rich and complex and smooth all at the same time. When you get other coffee from the store, sometimes it can be, there for a while.
Yeah.
Not with Criminal Coffee. Once the bean arrives, they are roasted and nitrogen sealed.
Ooh.
And shipped right to your doorstep, ensuring the best tasting coffee you will ever have in your existence.
Yes!
What I thought was really interesting about this coffee is something unique that they have specifically that no other coffee I've seen has done. Apparently there is a whole universe of characters. They call it the Criminal Coffee universe. Gives me that nostalgic Carmen Sandiego vibe.
Yeah, it does.
And to access this universe, all you have to do is scan a QR code that's on the box or bag that your coffee comes in.
Access granted.
And you'll see the latest developments and which characters are solving crimes and which ones are committing them. And the coolest thing about Criminal Coffee is that a portion of their profits actually go directly to solving crimes, cold cases, believe it or not.
Really?
Using the latest DNA technology testing. They actually solved a crime. They're actually able to solve the first case that they funded, and were able to give living relatives some closure.
That's awesome.
So if you want delicious, high-end coffee delivered right to your door, head over to www.criminalcoffee.com and use our code BeliefHole10, all caps, for 10% off your order.
Yes!
Once again, that's www.criminalcoffeeco.com. Code BeliefHole10 for 10% off. Let's drink some coffee and solve some crime. This coffee slaps. So good it's criminal.
All right, Chris.
I understand you have some high strangeness you'd like to get into.
Yes, I do. I've got some good high strangeness stuff here. Coming from the books I mentioned earlier, the 2 volumes of Where the Footprints End by Joshua Cutchin and Timothy Renner. Great resource. So I know some of you out there, some of you listeners have already purchased these books. If you're into Bigfoot, if you're really into the connections, we love to connect dots here, find patterns. Actually, we use these books in a couple other episodes, even though they weren't specifically Bigfoot, like Glimmerman. We used a lot of the research with invisible entities, a lot of the research in this book for those episodes. So definitely excellent.
Link them in the show notes.
But today, I wanted to focus on the UFO connection, because you hear about
Yes.
this all the time. And as I said earlier, there is a controversy in the Bigfoot world, Bigfoot community, with the flesh and bone and hair researchers, people who believe that he's a physical only entity, as opposed to those who believe he has some supernatural or metaphysical qualities.
Big debate.
Big debate.
I'm excited for your hairy examples.
I'm going to give you some hairy examples of extraterrestrials or alleged extraterrestrial connection. Actually, before we get to that, I mentioned earlier about the connection with the sightings, right? And the volume of sightings of both of these phenomena.
You're talking about UFOs and Bigfoot.
Right, in similar states. So according to George Mason University, Professor Peter Lesson, quote, 6 of the top 10 UFO and Bigfoot states are the same: Washington, Oregon, New Mexico, Alaska, Wyoming, and Colorado. 2 states, Washington and Oregon, not surprisingly, are among both categories' top 5. UFO and Bigfoot sightings often happen within hours of each other in what can only be described as, quote, window areas, where paranormal activity appears to manifest regularly. Alien abductees report hairy humanoids of all sizes aboard UFOs, or whatever otherworld space to which they sojourn. So commonly, their accounts could fill an entire book. And they only give a few examples of, I mean, you can, hundreds of these examples. We're going to have linked in the show notes online resources where you can find accounts of these crazy experiences. Actually, one of the you used before, Jared, the humanoids.
Albert Rosales.
Yeah, great resource. And they go on. In fact, extraterrestrials and Bigfoot sightings share a long-standing history. And here we go to the diaries again. An 1888 diary shared with paranormal author Brad Steiger hints some indigenous traditions may have linked Bigfoot to extraterrestrials. According to one entry, the diarist observed a tribesman in California taking plates of raw meat into a cave for an enormous, docile, hairy beast. The tribesman told him the creature, dubbed a, quote, crazy bear, arrived on Earth when a, quote, small moon, piloted by humans, descended from the stars.
Sounds like a UFO to me.
This loosely aligns with some Pacific Northwest tribal beliefs, John, and I want you to read this because this is a pretty fantastical account here.
According to the Cowlitz Indian tribe, these Mount St. Helens apes have lived near the mountain for over 300 years. The old Indian chiefs have told me they see white birds that land and let hairy, giant-sized people out of them that speak the language of the Aboriginal people that were here when they first arrived here. They tell the stories about these giant-sized people who carried away many Indian girls. They know how to dry salmon on flat, hot rocks in the sun and store them in caves for the winter in the high country. The Indians saw the objects drop out of the skies over 300 years ago and land with many odd-looking people that have big eyes, wear silver-colored suits that shine in the sun. They say they make their eyes hurt and burn. They said they have a blue light that stops all kinds of animals.
Oh, weird.
The old chiefs said little people come in small white birds. Big people come out of the big white birds that do not make any sound like birds. No quacking. They said these white birds do not have any wings, and they go straight up and come straight down. That ain't no bird.
That ain't no bird.
Essentially, white things flying.
Ain't no bird I never heard of.
It's funny, that white reminds me of the
Tic Tac?
Yeah, the recent Tic Tac stuff. And I want to find the original diary entry, find it in the whole context of that.
I do want to say the silver, wearing the silver suits, the big-eyed, I mean, obviously,
Right.
typical gray type aliens, gray or green. That seems like such a 60s sci-fi view of wearing the suits and stuff, but it's so weird how many stories.
I know.
The more you look into it, there are tons of stories where they're wearing these like skin-tight silver suits. It's just so bizarre. And then this is like a tribal man who
This
has
is a diary of someone from 1888 who
okay,
allegedly
but the big chief say
was
this.
allegedly told this, yeah. But again, I want to find the context of this because it's definitely fascinating and it does seem so incredible.
But it could be made up
Like,
diary.
and it has all these things in it. That's why I want to find the context. But the reference link is in there in the book. So check it out for yourselves too, but I will do that as well. Really interesting. And it rolls us right into my first little fun anecdote. Well, probably very frightening for the experiencer who had this experience. But this comes to us from Preston Dennett.
Oh, yeah. Great researcher.
Who, if you heard the most recent, well, you're expansion member, so you've heard it either in the expansion or the main drop we did as a preview for main feed listeners, the Schoolyard UFOs. John, this is the same author. He presented this, I believe, in one of his books, but also online in this collection of strange humanoid experiences. And this happens to be an experience in a UFO involving big feet, apparently.
This happens in July of 1983.
This happened July 23rd, 1988, at night.
Katharina Wilson was taken aboard a UFO where she saw several people, including members of her own family. Several of them were taken to a large area that appeared to be some sort of zoo. In large glass cages, Katharina saw a variety of animals, none that she had seen before. She saw 2 gorilla-like beings and a large cat. The hairy beings were very tall and had appeared to have been sleeping. She was surprised to see that one of the hairy beings had fallen asleep, holding a newspaper. The enclosure had furniture, including a desk, chairs, and books. The cat-like creature had white and orange spots and was about 3 feet tall. At another glass enclosure, she saw an animal resembling a cross between a lion and a reptile. It was lying on its back, apparently sleeping. No description on the abductors is mentioned. Now that comes from Preston Dennett.
Yeah. I love that it's just so like Twilight Zone.
Yeah, Creature Zoo.
Like a collection of creatures
This
from
is a Star Trek episode, I think.
But it's funny though, what I thought was interesting about this, after going through a lot of where the footprints end, I wasn't going to talk about this, but this story, when I reread this story, I was like, oh, this ties right into the accounts of Bigfoot seen with large cat-like creatures that aren't quite cats. And this goes throughout time.
Didn't you say there was a story of that from Ohio?
Yeah, the Minerva monster.
What?
Yeah.
Seen with cat-like creatures?
That's one of the accounts of
Weird.
that. Yeah, I actually have a quote from the eyewitness of the Minerva monster, which I don't know if you're familiar with, John, but she said, the eyewitness to the Minerva monster said, every time this thing was around, we always seen a cat, like a cougar.
Which we don't have in Ohio generally, just FYI.
Right. This came from Hal Caton is her name, or his name, her name. Bigfoot investigator Barbara Galloway described the pair of creatures which often appeared alongside the Minerva Bigfoot as quadrupedal. Quote, like big mutated cats, about the same size as a mountain lion, about the same color, only they had funny shaped heads.
Like a cone head?
Like, maybe? To make it abundantly clear, multiple witnesses reported 2 exceptional large felines in the company of a tall, hairy humanoid, and that's a more modern account.
I just picture this like Bigfoot walking with 2 like lions beside him.
That's such
That'd
a cool
be
idea.
crazy.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Reminds me of like a Frank Frazetta painting or something.
If Bigfoot wasn't enough, it's like He-Man. But like big man and his lion friend.
You know, I had that as a toy. I got it at a yard sale when I was little, but I didn't know it was from He-Man. I just always kept it as like my little monster creature, and it smelled like incense, like a patchouli.
Like Nag Champa.
I later discovered the
did?
smell. I had
The tiger?
She-Ra?
yeah, She-Ra.
She-Ra?
I had the She-Ra toy, but I didn't know
Wait,
it was
was
from
She-Ra
He-Man.
the tiger?
No.
Oh, I'm sorry. That's right. That wasn't the tiger. That was the lady.
She-Ra was the woman.
Princess? Yeah. I don't
What was
remember.
the tiger's name? Skeletor.
No. Yeah, what was the tiger's name? Let's look it up.
John Jr.
Lord Malkton.
Battle Cat.
No, that's not its name.
Cringer.
No.
Cringer is a fictional large cat in the Masters of the Universe franchise. He has green and orange striped fur, similar to that of a
It was
tiger.
Cringer?
I guess so.
That doesn't make any
Cringer
sense.
the Battle Cat.
I smell Mandela effect all over this.
Cringer. Wow, I don't remember that at all.
That was kind of cool, though. Cringer. Anyway, it's besides the point.
You know they're half dragon?
Who?
Battle cats?
That makes sense.
Pretty rad.
That is so weird. This ties
that's
right
cool
into
to
what I'm
think
talking about. Because I wasn't going to mention it, but one of the Arthurian legends, King Arthur legends, was there was this giant hairy wild man who walked with 2 cats that were half dragon.
God, can you
No
imagine?
way.
So he was He-Man.
It's rad.
What a weird connection.
That's a weird connection.
That's so strange.
I was not going to go there.
It's weird that I even mentioned that.
Yeah.
That's bizarre. What I was going to say, though, was when it comes to the historical traditions of this idea of this wild man with giant mutated cat-like things, and by the way, the ABCs, the alien big cats as they're known in cryptozoology, I was never very interested in them because it seems like one could say an escaped exotic pet.
Why did you say ABCs?
That's what they're known as, like Beck's Black-Eyed Kids. ABCs,
what does that stand for?
Alien big cats.
Oh, they're supposed to be alien?
Yeah.
Just because they show up in places they shouldn't be?
Right.
Like in the UK?
It's a big thing in the UK, yeah. But so several global cultures associate wild men with large cats, as I was saying. In some parts of North America, the term catamount interchangeably refers to cougars or large, hairy humanoids. Isn't that weird? So it could be either. The same can be said of the term wampus.
Cattywampus.
Right? Wampus from early American logging culture. So it's interchangeable big cat and hairy humanoid. The trend extends to Eurasia. In 1889, Major Lawrence Waddell discovered prints 17,000 feet in the Himalayas, which Sherpas informed him were, quote, the trail of the hairy wild men who are believed to live amongst the eternal snows, along with the mythical white lions, whose roar is reputed to be heard during storms. Isn't it all this weird
you
connection?
have in the Hani, we talked about in Northwest Territories, Canada,
Yeah.
you had the Nakani, I think was the name for the Bigfoot type hairy monster
Yeah.
cannibal man. And then he also was the Wahila, which was the giant white wolf.
Right, around the same. Oh, yeah, it's white again.
Yeah.
Very bizarre.
His favorite color.
Yeah, so I just thought that was fascinating. I wasn't going to bring in the big cat stuff, but again, this book's so interesting because it brings in the connections of big feet and witches, the connections of big feet and the white lady phenomenon.
Like Bigfoot as a familiar?
Yeah, or potentially it walking with familiars like these big cats. There's so many cool research ties that they do in these books. Anyway, that was kind of my bit of high strangeness for this episode. But I do want to wrap it up with the idea of this, maybe a bit of bias for the bone and blood researchers.
Bit of bone and blood.
I think F and BH stands for flesh and bone and hair.
Okay.
And where the footprints end, they say, quote, so many flesh and bone and hair advocates suggest with a dismissive wave of the hand that betrays a leap from logic to magical thinking that UFO occupants, whoever they might be, are as interested in Bigfoot as we humans are, and that this explains the many cases in which Bigfoot and UFOs appear simultaneously or in close approximations of time and space. Bigfoot researcher author John Green said of the Bigfoot UFO connection, quote,
If they, Bigfoot, have been seen near UFOs, I would prefer to consider it a coincidence or to assume that the occupants of the UFO were just looking at the Sasquatch, or vice versa.
This science fiction thinking, as they refer to it, is working backward from an unfalsifiable conclusion, i.e. that Bigfoot are natural animals, to a bizarre bit of equally unfalsifiable fiction that the UFOnauts are interested in Bigfoot.
UFO pilots?
Yeah.
Okay.
We don't really know what Bigfoot are, nor do we know who or what UFOs or UFOnauts are. It remains true that both Bigfoot and UFOs are rare and anomalous things. That they would be seen together even once is worth noting. That Bigfoot and UFOs have ever been seen together or relatively close to one another multiple times suggests connections deeper than mere coincidence. To suggest that the Bigfoot are aliens, or even, as addressed in Volume 1, that Bigfoot are the pets of aliens, slips into more fanciful science fiction speculation. It is enough to claim that, given reports, there seems to be some connection between Bigfoot and UFOs, as there do not seem to be a preponderance of reports of UFOs seen in conjunction with mountain gorillas or orangutans. This suggests there is something more to Bigfoot, and therefore tips the scale even further away from the flesh and bone and hair concept. Basically saying like, yeah, well, I prefer to think that because we see Bigfoot with UFOs a lot, it's probably just a coincidence, and it's probably because aliens are in the crafts and they want to investigate Bigfoot like humans do.
Right.
It's just a lot of leaps.
They're just interesting wildlife.
They're starting at an endpoint of logic. We're saying like,
they're just
we know that
bone and
these
hair.
are aliens in this craft. We know that Bigfoot are this and
Just an animal.
right.
But they're interested in this animal. Yeah, I see.
I mean,
how
who
that-
knows? They could be right, but it definitely to me seems like there's more going on.
The point is we don't know.
Yeah.
And Bigfoot could be special. And that brings us nice and neatly to our final point for the episode. I call this Chosen by the Bigfoots for Contact and Love.
This is fun and sweet,
And this goes to the idea that they are special in a way, and definitely more than just an animal.
and maybe not always horrifying.
If
like
this is
the
true.
Cowman account.
Yeah, if this is true. Mike Patterson of North Toronto in Ontario speaks of these things as an ancient race of people and says that they do speak English, or they can. Now, he was allowed to document a family of Bigfoot. He's been there for a long time. He refers to them as the true people of the earth. And this voice we're about to hear is a conversation he had, allegedly, with a 17-year-old Bigfoot, who is now, at the time of our taping, 25. I don't know his name.
Oh, the Bigfoot?
Yeah. They're talking about several subjects in this vocal clip, and he goes on to say that they're going to change the world. The reality of the Bigfoot will change the entire way of human thinking.
We'll see.
Now, I'll just read this quick explanation from this YouTube video, and then we'll play the clip. This is his description here. This kind of lays it out. This has been 12 years of ongoing Sasquatch research, 8 years of ongoing contact with an ancient people. Sasquatch are people. They're not animals. This is what the real stuff is about. This channel is without embellishment. It's told like it is. Truth. I just want answers without lies, without deception, no manipulation. They know that. They see a pure heart, and they have given in a big way, continually. This approach has been extremely successful in bringing some of the most important work in this field to the forefront of Sasquatch research. It is my path and passion, Mike says. Sasquatch are an ancient human type of race, part human, as they have stated, interdimensional, with abilities that change our entire perception of reality. Sasquatch truth changes our world. Now, without further ado,
I like that.
here is a clip from Mike, supposedly talking to a 17-year-old Bigfoot that he's long familiar with.
You, my friend. I miss you, my friend. The who? Who? Now, my friend. What is
It's my favorite part.
Love you, buddy. Thanks for coming into my life, my friend.
Does that love you?
I'm really happy to have you in my life, my friend.
No. We love you.
Oh, that's very nice.
We love you. God, do.
Oh man, I love you, buddy.
That's
Crazy. There you go.
You know, I was more skeptical of that before hearing it with headphones on. It sounds like a large.
Yeah, it definitely sounds like there's a lot of pressure behind that voice.
Now, audio guy, I was thinking initially pitch shift down, maybe play through a stereo in the same space. Sounds like it's happening in the same location.
Yeah, it definitely has some natural ambience in there. It doesn't sound overdubbed,
right,
like in a studio or something.
It'd have to be maybe projected in that space.
It's weird. The one thing I noticed, like the voice sounds like it's
breathing in.
Yeah, it's like breathing in when it talks.
Like it, dog, like it is.
It does sound parts where it's powerful.
It sounds loud.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, it sounds big to me, like wide when
the
you
first
have
part
headphones
that I don't know, for some reason felt more real when it was like, and then it goes, oh, it does that like high thing that just, I don't know. Something about that part.
Oddly, the guy's reaction sounds pretty real to me. Almost like you're talking to your pet or your friend.
This is just audio?
Love you, buddy.
Yeah. It's a black screen. I don't know if he has permission from them to film video, but he's recording audio.
That's unfortunate.
Yeah, I mean, you know.
It could definitely be fake, obviously, but it is very
When
convincing.
is this supposed to be recorded?
So he just did an interview on Coast to Coast, February of this year.
It was actually May 14th, 2023, on Coast to Coast with Connie Willis.
And he said that Bigfoot is 25 now, and when this was recorded, it was 17. So 25 minus 17.
So this guy has been to Coast, and he's saying he has contact with these things, and he doesn't have permission to tell anything else about them.
Well, I don't know how much he wants to, as far as like sharing their location or anything like that,
right.
obviously.
Well, obviously, I mean, if he has...
Reminds you of the Todd Standing thing, where it's like a secret location,
right,
with secret
So
contact.
he just has this special relationship with them. They just want to be left alone or something sort of thing.
It sounds like what he's trying to do eventually is bring the truth out to change humanity.
It has a contactee feel where it's like Sasquatch truth will make humans elevate to the next, be stewards of their world or something. I mean, I want this to be real. Just listening to it, I want to meet one of these guys. It sounds so sweet.
It does sound big. There's a little bit of, I mean, I'm not for sure, but there sounds like a hint of audio artifacts from the pitching, but that could just be part of the vocal cords.
Right.
I mean, it's not super noticeable. It's definitely hard to know for sure, but so what did George Norrie say?
It wasn't George Norrie, it was, what was her name?
Connie Willis.
I'd have so many questions.
Yeah. That's the thing. So he was on there for a bit, but it was weird because he was on there with the same episode with a guy who was the
guy who was
governor of, I forget which state it was. Was it like some western state?
Oklahoma State Representative Justin Humphrey.
Basically, he wanted to give out hunting licenses for Bigfoot. Because he doesn't believe in Bigfoot, he's skeptical. He's open-minded, but he's skeptical. He didn't do it because he wants to hunt Bigfoot. He does it because
it was more of like a
tourism. He wants to bring basically like a novel kind of thing.
A spotlight on hunting in the state.
Spotlight on hunting. That was the idea. Then she brought this guy on. He's like, well, obviously, Mike said, like I heard your idea at first, and I was not a big fan of the idea of giving hunting licenses for Bigfoot. And I know that's not what you want to do, but these are very real people, and they deserve our respect. Yada yada. And the guy was saying, he's like, I'm not going to say I don't believe that, but I'd like to have that verified if I'm going to, I'm open-minded. I believe in demons and the Bible, but I might believe in the Bigfoot. I don't know. I don't know. I can't say that's
right.
I'm very open, and I'm not any criticizing, but I'd want it verified. I'm always a skeptic. I would want verified, and I would want voice studies on that to see if that's human, not human, but it's very interesting. And again, I'm very open to, here's the deal. A lot of people wouldn't believe in giants. I read the Bible. I believe the Bible. There's giants. A lot of people don't believe in demons. I believe in demons. So, again, a lot of people are skeptical of my beliefs, and I'm just founded in them, and nobody's going to rock me off of them. I know that Mike is founded in, and he knows what he knows. I mean, if he was there doing that, he knows it. And so I would not disrespect Mike in any way or question, you know, but for me, I'd want it, unless I'm standing there hearing that myself, then I'd want it verified.
Well, I mean, it is a big claim to throw out there. I mean, to say that you just have this relationship with Bigfoot, big claims require big proof.
Yeah.
And that audio is interesting, but it's not enough.
Right. I will say on the face of it, my skeptical side always goes towards, you know, it is this kind of thing like I'm special, I have this connection.
Right.
But at the same time, you have, when it comes to like large primates, for instance, you have Jane Goodall and Diane Fossey.
Yeah, right.
They spent all that time with them, and they were the first to do so without weapons, which is why they believe they were able to get so far with these things and bring out the information. So it's possible.
Yeah, I mean, I can see if you did start a relationship like that it would be very special if it was real.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure in a lot of different ways, psychologically, developing a relationship with something like these beings, if it's true, would be very profound.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
you would
Personally,
definitely not want to f them over if it was true.
Well, even gorillas or chimpanzees, researchers get so emotionally attached like family.
Yeah.
Imagine
They're
a Bigfoot.
magical beings, like gorillas, tigers. You know, I was watching Tiger King last night.
Yeah, the new season?
The new season, which is wild.
Dude, it's so crazy, man.
I don't even know if I believe some of it just because it's so perfectly
crazy
reality. Like,
coordinated.
I mean, maybe, but the whole thing is just so, how can people even act like
it's
this?
Also, it's funny because I was watching and realizing like every season they put someone else in jail. that's what comes
I'm just
out of
on
it.
the first season, like the
first season?
3 or
Of
something.
season 1?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay, that's crazy.
Do you know what else though I started watching?
What's that,
Blew
John?
my mind how good it was.
Tell us.
Take a guess. It's a remake of an old movie, 2 movies actually.
Scream the series.
No.
That's not very good. It's terrible. I tried to watch that. A remake of 2 movies?
Yes. Evil Dead.
Yeah, a while ago. Yeah, that was good.
It's not super new.
Didn't Sam Raimi produce it? I
Yes.
think. I thought that was good for the remake.
I went to Rotten Tomatoes. It's got like 100%.
Rotten Tomatoes?
Rotten Tomatoes. We got 100% from critic and audience.
Really?
score.
That's rare.
And I tried to start it multiple times, and I just couldn't get into it. Didn't even get through the first episode. And last night I tried it one more time. I'm surprised at how creepy, funny, entertaining.
His monsters are so good.
Oh, the monsters! Like I think it goes on for 3 seasons, and I'm like on the 2nd or 3rd
Wow,
episode.
that says a lot for you because you.
I know. I'm like the demon on the first one is freaky. I'm like, this is really good. And that's why I went and checked the critics score, and it's like ridiculously high. I've never even seen anything.
I'll have to watch that again, or I'll have to try it again because I couldn't get into it either. But yeah, if you guys out
Once
there,
it gets started and into it, it is pretty good.
If you guys haven't seen the original Evil Dead, well, specifically Evil Dead 2, which is kind of a remake of the first Evil Dead, which is amazing. It's very indie, but if you're not too into any movies, you could start with Army of Darkness, which is so good.
That one's better.
The third one, it's more like finished feeling, but Evil Dead 2 is classic.
Evil Dead is
and
definitely
hilarious.
like, it's got the rough edges, but it's just like, what is this?
Evil Dead 2 is, they
is it
realized,
Evil Dead and Evil Dead 2?
Yeah.
There's 2 of them?
The first Evil Dead was done kind of more serious, and they realized they wanted to redo it, and they seemed like they realized like kind of how ridiculous it was. So they made it, that's when he's like laughing with the lamp, and he's like bending down. They're laughing together. So good. The lamp comes alive, and everything gets real crazy. The deer is like,
oh god, yeah.
But anyways, so the sequel is basically a remake of the first, but it's so good. Evil Dead 2. Army of Darkness was the follow-up, which is just more.
It was later on.
It was like an anthem for the series. It was really
Epic.
good. Epic.
Yeah.
Great stuff.
No big feet in that though, unfortunately.
But so either of you haven't gotten far in the series?
I saw the first couple episodes, I think. It was one of those things where that was a big part of my like high school years was watching Army of Darkness. So I had this weird feeling of nostalgia when I watched it. And it was like, he's older. So maybe it was why I had to be in the right mood to watch it, because it was just a reminder of I'm also older.
Yeah.
You know, so I would like to try it again because I do love Bruce Campbell.
It's funny when even the lines he says, you know.
Oh, yeah. So perfect.
Yeah. They're similar, you know.
Yeah.
So it's
like an
just
Elvis sort of
real
like,
campy.
Yeah.
Hey, baby, or whatever.
Your mother ever tell you to knock?
Anyway, guys.
Check it out, guys. Well, thanks for everyone who's here. All our amazing expansion members. You guys rock.
Yeah, we hope you liked this cursory dive into the high strangeness of Bigfoot. There's plenty more.
We could do if you had fun. We could.
No.
Okay. Later on, we could do a volume 2, volume 3. Like, we're going to be doing this for a long time. So
Yeah, maybe like season 7 or 8.
there you go.
I did say I was going to ask you, John, any new concepts of Bigfoot since we had, it was very brief.
There wasn't a whole lot of evidence presented. I mean,
it was more the weirder anecdotes.
I mean, the ending audio clip is interesting for sure. I'd need to know more about the guy and what his background is and what kind of a person he is to...
You should check out his YouTube
claim.
channel.
It's a weird claim to say that you're friends with Bigfoot and you... I mean, I feel like, what is his reasoning that he's not showing it to more people? And like,
we're not ready.
You can't video for him.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a hard pill to swallow.
No, for sure.
Well, not saying it's an impossible claim.
It's a convenience.
Yeah.
It is hard because every time I've heard that before with a Bigfoot sort of thing, it ends up being a hoax. Like, well, I can't.
There's more
I'm
of
not going to
these?
show, not the audio thing.
But but there's more people that say they're friends with Bigfoot.
Oh,
and they're just not.
Todd Standing is a good example. Or
really?
he's, I don't know, not friends, but he's out there with them. I mean, there's a lot of people who have
And none of them have
relationships.
pictures.
Todd Standing has pictures, but look at him and give your subjective opinion on what you think it is.
What's his name?
Todd Standing. I did see somebody do like a breakdown of like, if you take away all the makeup, it's like Todd Standing's head.
It's like his face right there. Yeah, I don't know what to believe about Todd Standing.
Oh, wait.
One of our first episodes was going to be called Todd Standing on the Shoulders of Giants, because that was back when I was really interested in the stuff he was bringing out. And it was about whether he was real or not, along with the Corey Good or Bad. We were doing these nameplay episodes. Concepts.
Is this supposed to be a picture? Like with moss all over him?
That might be Todd in his ghillie suit.
They are unsettlingly like Uncanny Valley looking, the pictures he does get of the faces.
Yeah.
This isn't one of them, is it?
No. What are you looking at?
I don't
That's
know.
like a statue or something.
No, it's not.
He's like waving. I think we covered Todd at one point. Remember when he was missing? I think in Canada?
Yeah.
He was missing for a few days, and when they went out to find him, he came back with this evidence because he'd been lost in the bush. He spent so much time out
Is this
there.
one?
That's Harry and the Henderson. That's Harry and the Henderson.
I like this one's like a Michael Jackson one.
On the right up there?
Little baby face.
Why Michael Jackson?
I don't know, just the nose. It looks kind of
I
like
see.
soft and approachable.
Have you seen this one, Chris?
Oh yeah, Harry. Good old Harry.
That would be a fun film to
Harry and the Henderson.
do a watch along.
Yeah.
John Lithgow.
I'd have weird feelings watching that.
I know it would be
long
very
ago.
weird. And we'd start watching some seasons of Alf.
Yeah, and then Married with Children.
Just go down the line.
Just everything we were watching at that time, we were kids.
Shoot on over to Family Matters.
TGIF, guys.
All right, we got to go, guys.
All right, guys, thanks so much for hanging out.
And gals.
Stay tuned. Lots of fun episodes coming up, as you know. And
Yeah, we hope you enjoyed the interview with Tony. Not interview.
yeah,
Conversation.
if you haven't listened to
Conversation.
it yet, it's on the main feed. So check it out. We had a great time with
Tell
him.
your friends and family. We need more people to listen.
Please.
All right, guys.
All right.
Take care. Bye-bye.